Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Plan for the Magic. I am Audrey. I'm here with my co-host, Dave, and we are going to hopefully give you some tips and tricks on how to plan or wing your next vacation to the Walt Disney World. So let's get started. Okay.
This is another Disney podcast production.
All right, here we are, episode 19.
Yes.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Good. We were on another little hiatus, but that was my fault. It was my fault. I lost track of time. Then I was like, oh, wait. I skipped a week that I was supposed to upload one, and I didn't. And I was like, well, it's all great because we had one in the can. And then now we're like catching up. So I'm going to post this tonight.
Whoa, okay.
So, yeah. So it is Thursday, February. It is Thursday, March 17th. Yeah. This will be around Thursday, March 17th, maybe around 9 o'clock in the evening.
Hey, let's do it.
Then, so good stuff. Okay, so we talked a little bit today about what we wanted to chat about, and I'm excited, but I feel like we need to start, at least on this show, and confirm something.
Okay.
I am officially no longer a pass holder.
Did it pass? The dedeadline passed?
It did. March 4th was my last day.
Wow. How does that feel? Especially when you cannot get a new one.
I know. There is no telling when they will be back.
Right.
I'm confident that they will be back in this millennia.
Yeah.
So, how does it feel? Yes. I think I talked about this a little bit this is already like side rail. I think I talked about this a little bit when I was considering not renewing, and it's, man, I'm waiting to go back for when there's something new.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it's not that like, it's too overpriced, and I know I get the 15% off if you book it. And that definitely was the advantage. But here is the problem. I know that the earliest, and I mean the earliest that I will be back is July. And it didn't make sense for me to burn February, March, April, May, June. I mean, that's like half of the year. And so when I did the math, I was like, the 15% off doesn't equate to not being able to go to almost half of the time. And then I'm spending the rest of the time like making up. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go to Halloween time, and I'll go at Christmas time, and I'll go in the fall.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why. But like you said, I am risking that. What if it doesn't come back this summer?
Right. So a question about that, which I don't know the answer to, is if you went in July and you purchased park tickets, you could convert those park tickets to an annual pass before the trip.
Correct.
Can you do that after the trip?
That is a good question. I believe that how it has worked in the past is you had to have at least 1 day left when you decided to do that. So if they're not selling annual passes at that time and you have 1 day left, I don't think I'll be able to do that.
Okay.
So there you go.
But if, I was thinking about when you renew, your renewal date starts on that date for us because we converted park tickets to annual passes before our trip. Our annual pass didn't start until we arrived.
Right.
So I was I was like, well, why wouldn't it just but once you have that date, that's the date.
Yeah.
So you're right. Okay.
Look at all the stuff you learn on our show. Like we know things about Disney. Hello.
And today we're going to talk about, this is a gnarly one. It can get complicated. It is a transportation. This is, I think, going to be a really important topic to talk about. There have been changes. There are some strategies on how to use it, and I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so we talked. Here's what's funny. We talked almost at length today. We had a text chain going of conversation about what we were going to do tonight. And the funny thing is I kind of zoomed out a little bit, and I was like, man, the dynamic of our show is really is starting to shift. Now, nobody's going to know this unless I say it, so I'm going to say it.
Right.
I feel like when it comes to like the 90s, the early 2000s, the 2000 teens, I don't know if that's a thing. Like I had a very if you knew me and you were going to Disney, I got a phone call, I got a text message. I knew it backwards and forwards. There have been so many changes that that's not the case anymore. And I'm leaning more and more on you. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that I'm pretty sure my mom asked you about the meal plan before booking our trip in 2015.
Pretty sure that happened.
I'm pretty sure that happened.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I might not have talked to her for the 10 years previous to that, except for maybe some random outing that we all saw each other. But I love it. But right. And because, you know, you lean on people that have like that knowledge, especially when it comes to dumping a lot of cash at a place.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's funny. Like say to me, I'm like, look how things have changed. Miss Audrey is like the jam. And that's just because like last time I went was obviously the first day of the 50th. There wasn't Lightning Lane and Disney. What is it called? I can't even remember the name of the new app now. What do they call it?
Disney Plus.
No, Disney.
Genie Plus.
Genie Plus, yeah.
Sorry. Disney Plus is
too many pluses. But yeah, like that just kind of caught me. I was like, dang, you know, and like we have a show coming up. Spoiler alert. Next show is going to be about like dining and about ADRs. And I was like, Audrey, I started texting you. I was like, I haven't done an ADR since 2007.
Gosh.
Can you imagine? So anyway, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But transportation, I feel like I still got a handle on because like the overarching piece of that really hasn't changed except for one we're going to hit right off the top. And so do you want to jump in with that one?
Yeah. So
Great.
I think for many of us who have been Disney fans, we have gone to Disney, we love Disney. Part of the experience, now this has changed there were two iterations of it changing. Back in 2015, when I had two very small children, we checked our bags. Part of this thing that was called Magical Express is you checked your bags at your departing resort, and those bags showed up in your hotel room when you stayed on property resort. That was all part of the Magical Express. So you checked your bags, you arrived at MCO, the Orlando airport, you whisked yourself down to the bottom floor to the Disney Magical Express section. They put you on your bus and off you went.
Yeah, as I always said, I always called it the long hallway to happiness.
Yeah.
That was what I was, because it was quite the walk. You go and you're like, oh, wow, it's all the way down there.
Yeah. So once COVID hit, they removed the baggage transfer.
Which was so magical.
Oh my gosh. I mean, in those seasons when you have littles and you have car seats and you have strollers and you have bags and you have people who heard from me when I got back from that trip, they said, what did you love about Disney World? Yeah. And I swear to you, the number one thing I said was Magical Express.
Yes. All of the crap we didn't have to worry about getting from A to B.
Someone else took care of was so great. So that part had already been, removed with COVID. And then in January of 2022, the Magical Express is no more. And in that there is not complimentary transportation provided by the Walt Disney World Company from the airport to the resorts in buses that are, designed and outfitted with Disney
entertainment on board, graphics on the outside. Yeah, it lost all of its magic.
That's right. But the company that Disney contracted to provide that service is continuing. So I will hand that to you and you can explain what.
Yeah. So basically MEARS MEARS was always the company that was employing it was basically a contract, but Disney put their skin on all of it. And well, now that skin has been removed, which also has been removed is, complimentary, but we all know that we all know that we were paying for it. Yeah. But it felt good to be like free transportation. Hey. So yeah, it's a Mears just picked it up and kept it right on going. Obviously, it not being Disney, and when COVID settles, I don't want to jump the gun. I know things have changed drastically and things seem to be improving. But let's just say when it's over, the one thing that you'll not be able to do because that wall, or there's been a wall added that is now Disney and Mears. Even though it was Mears, Disney kind of removed that wall, which was that magical, hey, just when you check your bags at your home airport, we'll get them to your room.
You're already on vacation.
Right. Yes. That is not going to happen with Mears because Mears isn't Disney. The contract is over. And so it's fairly affordable. I don't remember. It's like anywhere from like $13 to $20 a person, somewhere like that. It might even be like $15, $16. So it's definitely worth it if you're going to, if you're not planning on getting any other type of transportation for the time that you're there, for a family four, that's $60, actually, right? I mean, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up because I think they had introductory.
Was it introductory pricing? Oh, that's a good point. So yeah, I mean, this isn't news. There's nothing new about this, but it's one of those things like if you're, like to me, I've talked about this. We'll talk about this later, but like I usually would get a vehicle from the airport that is still through the roof as they're recovering for pricing wise. So I am not like, that's not always going to be what I want to do moving forward.
Your prices were correct just one way. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Each way. Yeah. So 13. So if it was 16 and 16, so 60. So for a family of four, it's $60-ish each way. Yeah. So yeah, about the price of a one-day ticket to one of the parks ish. Yeah. So yeah, we wanted to start off with that. So we are going to kind of categorize them in Disney transportation and non-Disney transportation. So even though this is non-Disney transportation, I still put it in this category because it used to be. It's something that like if you've gone to Disney anytime in the past 20 years, you knew of this. I just wanted to like, hey, that part of the Disney magic is gone, but the transportation still exists, if that makes sense. It's still available. Yeah. Okay. So next one, we're just going to stay right on that. And we're going to hang out here for obviously the majority of your Disney transportation. And that is buses. And so there's a lot to unpack when you're talking about buses on property, right? So there's all kinds of things.
Your resort from the hotel, from the airport, or you've driven in and you're parked and now we're trying to get from point A to point B.
Yes. So now you're in the bubble and you got to move around. Okay. Yes. So let's obviously, call the kettle black or whatever the right analogy is. If you stay on Disney property, the majority of people are going to use those buses to get to and from the parks. They run constantly up to an hour or maybe even 90 minutes before a park opens. They start at the resorts, and as late or maybe even later, an hour to 90 minutes after your resorts close. Obviously, look at the website for the time that you're going to be there just to make sure that all of that is operating under like normal business hours, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the biggest and most obvious. It's included. We can't use free because you're paying for it. So it is included if you're staying on property to get you to and from all 6 theme parks. So it does include both water parks as well.
Sometimes when you're in the off season, like in the winter, I will say the water park transportation's a little tricky. So from some resorts, you have to take a bus from the resort to Disney Springs and then pick up a water park bus from Disney Springs. In the summer, we've had, or not even the summer, but like in the warmer months, which is a good 75% of the months. When the water parks are fully operational, you'll have better luck going direct from your resort to the water park, but that one is not always the case.
That is a perfect segue. So talk a little bit about Disney Springs.
Yeah. So, there are relatively direct bus routes from individual resorts to the parks and to Disney Springs. And And Disney Springs, of course. I love Disney Springs. My home DVC resort is close to Disney Springs. My favorite moderate resort is close to Disney Springs. That's like where I sort of gravitate. My home resort is Old Key West, and my favorite moderate is Port Orleans French Quarter, both of which you can hop on a boat. We'll talk about alternative transportation in a minute. But Disney Springs can serve as a hub for you to get to other places on property that your resort does not directly go to. So that might be a different resort. So if you're staying at Port Orleans French Quarter and you or anywhere, and you have a dining reservation at Chef Mickey's at the Contemporary, you can't take a bus from your resort to the Contemporary. From resort to resort, that is not available on the bus system. So you have to figure out a way, a secondary way to do that. And Disney Springs can serve as a really helpful hub for that.
Yes. And we'll unpack that even more here in a minute. Next one is, this is going to sound funny, but we have to say resorts. And so, yes, of course, buses come to and fro your resort. We're taking you like to Disney Springs and said parks. But also, it's worth noting that you can still work the system for your included, aka free bus, if you take a day off and want to do some resort hopping. And now this is, I think this is extremely valuable during holiday times, most definitely at Christmas, right? To see some of these grandiose resorts decorated at Christmas and
They're
some of the special
beautiful
things that they happen. And I also think of Easter, like I know that Grand Floridian does some cool things at Easter. And so again, this is one of those things, plan ahead, plan for a lot of transportation time lost. But again, remember, it's cheaper than an Uber because you're not having to pay anything extra than you've already paid. But it's, again, how that basically works is you hop on the bus from your resort that says Disney Springs, and then when you get there, you just kind of look at all the little things and where do you want to go? Oh, you want to go to the Wilderness Lodge? Go stand over in the Wilderness Lodge boat and do that. Now, this is something that Kim and I made a joke earlier about how long it's been since we did an ADR. This is actually what we did when we went in 2007 and did all that. That's how we got to all of our reservations. We had several reservations at resorts, and that's just what we did. And we knew that, like, okay, it could be 45 minutes between waiting in line and getting to Disney Springs, and then 45 minutes, so we always banked like an hour and a half beforehand that we were out, at the bus stop and ready to go. So, but it is a great way to, again, get around Disney property and see some of those resorts on a day off or a no park day. Obviously spend a day at your resort and enjoy the pool and the food and the fun. But if you want to go see some great resorts, it is still doable without having to pay anything extra by continuing to use the bus system.
And you can also use the parks for that as well. So the park bus, these are just, if you think of them as like enormous bus stops, there are 5 of them really, right? So there's one at each of the main theme parks, and then you can think of that as Disney Springs as well. But what's helpful to remember about Disney Springs is that might be the closest place to your resort to get to. So if you can think of, if you're at Animal Kingdom Lodge, instead of coming to Disney Springs to make that transition, maybe you're going to Animal Kingdom. And it also can maybe matter where you're trying to get. Like, again, if you have a reservation at Olivia's at Old Key West from Animal Kingdom Lodge, maybe coming to Disney Springs is the way to get the Disney Springs that's already close to your destination resort.
And I think so you touched on it briefly at Disney Springs. There are a couple of Disney Springs resorts that are close to Disney Springs that have some boat service to get to and from Disney Springs, but that's also the case at the parks. And so I think of Wilderness Lodge and the campground. You can take buses to get there, but you can also take boats to get to the Magic Kingdom. Same as
there's like
Grand Floridian.
That's right. Yes. There's 3 boat systems, and the one you're describing is the one nearest Magic Kingdom on Lake Buena Vista. What's that? No.
Seven Seas Lagoon.
That's what I wish. Seven Seas Lagoon.
There you go.
I need to learn my water Bodies of water geography on property.
That's don't worry.
One trivia I don't know.
It's been around for 50 years, but as soon as you learn it, they'll change the name. Don't even bother.
I do remember the Pascagoula River. That one I loved talking about when we were down at Port Orleans French Quarter.
Love it.
Yeah, so that one is, you were saying Grand Floridian. Is there a boat? I don't think. Is there a boat from the Grand Floridian?
Yes, we took it. So we went to the cafe there and then took the boat over. It stops somewhere else. Is there a boat from the Poly?
There is definitely a boat from the Poly.
Okay, yeah. So we left Grand Flo, went to Poly, and then took
Magic the boat. Kingdom. Yeah. So I think the boat is from Poly. The boat is from Wilderness Lodge. There's a boat from the campground. Yeah. I think Grand Floridian and the Contemporary don't have boat service. No,
we definitely. We hopped on a boat at Grand Floridian, and it stopped at the Poly before it probably does the three. Kind of like what we'll talk about with Epcot here in a second.
Yep.
It hits it hits both of them, but not Contemporary, because that is like, if you haven't been in the Contemporary, it's close enough to walk.
That is absolutely close enough to walk. There are also like fun boats that you can rent. So there's like the ferry boats that are like people movers that are not the people mover, but human being transportation vehicles that are designed to get you from point A to point B. But then you can also like rent speedboats and some other fun things.
And then if we transition over to the boardwalk area, there's yet again, and this is the last time I went there, the last two times, this was my favorite way to like, there's nothing like entering Epcot from back there. Like it is so much better. You don't have to deal with parking, and you don't have to anyway, forget it. And it doesn't matter like why we love it, but back there at the boardwalk, there's a whole nother boat system that takes you from, I'm going to get the order wrong, but I think it's, so let's just say you're at Epcot and you're ready to leave and you're staying back there. It's not that long of a walk, but if you've walked all day at Epcot, you're pretty tired. So you can hop on the boat, and the boat will take you to Yacht Club, Boardwalk, and the Beach Swan and Dolphin and Beach Club. So it does all of those.
Yes.
But what's crazy is within that system, there's an entire other system that does the exact same thing that gets you to Hollywood Studios.
Yep.
So believe it or not, you can get to 3 of the 4 resorts by boat, but different systems, but not like you can't get to all of them via the same boat system. So quite a few ways to travel if you're staying on property, obviously, when it comes to Disney transportation.
So I think that it is Port Orleans Riverside, Port Orleans French Quarter, Saratoga Springs, Old Key West. That's the Disney Springs. You just named Swan Dolphin. Now we have the new Swan Reserve. Yacht Club, Beach Club, Boardwalk, those are all accessible by a boat. And then we have the Grand Floridian, the Polynesian, Wilderness Lodge, and Fort Wilderness. That's a lot of properties that have boat transportation.
Yeah. And then we have one more thing to talk about that is Disney transportation. But keep in mind, this is a rumor, but it is a relatively fresh and new rumor. And this would not surprise me at all because they still exist. And that is, the rumor is that Disney World is preparing to bring back the minivan transportation service. And so let me read the article very quickly. So, according to sources, Disney is preparing to bring back the minivan service. Minivans, as you might remember, are essentially operated by essentially a Disney-operated Uber, and they started back in the summer of 2017. Now, sources have indicated that Disney is in the process of staffing up and bringing the service back to WDW.
Oh my gosh!
Because of, I think the mask mandate, had a lot to do with this. And now that is all but removed, now you're in I get it that it was even on a bus, but the driver on the bus was still significantly distanced, during the transportation process. Not the case like in a regular sized vehicle. So I know a lot of people love this.
Let me tell you. So there are 2 reasons I think the minivans are amazing. Well, 4. Okay.
Get it.
A lot of reasons. Okay. The first one is they are so stinking adorable. They're red with white polka dots, and they are the most charming little vehicles driving. They look like little ladybugs, like Minnie Mouse ladybugs. So that's number one. Number 2 and 3 are actually really important. They have convertible car seats. So they have every kind of car seat for every size kid, from infant to a booster seat. Now, for those of us flying in who are able to use a coach vehicle from the airport, like Mears Express, that do not require car seats, renting or paying an extra fee on rideshare services for car seats is really frustrating. And so you are paying a premium for this service. I mean, I don't know what the rates will be if they come back, but that is a game changer for families. The second most, which is really, I think, a big deal here too, is they are allowed to drop off passengers at the closest possible location to your destination. There are some places like Hollywood Studios, Epcot, where that's generally the same place that Lyft and Uber can. But if you're talking Magic Kingdom, Lyft and Uber have to leave you at the transportation center, and minivans can drop you at the front door, basically.
Which is basically where the bus loop-ish.
Yeah,
right in there,
exactly.
Which is significantly closer.
It's so much closer. And then we used it. I can't remember. I'm sure I read this somewhere, but when we did the Hoop-de-Doo review at Fort Wilderness, again, if you do an Uber or Lyft, they can bring you to the main parking lot, and then you have to use the internal bus system of the Fort Wilderness campground to get all the way to the front by the water. For Hoop-de-Doo review, a minivan can drive you straight to the front door. And then my fourth, which is not very significant but was awesome, is that our driver asked our destination and then had like a Disney soundtrack for that destination. So he had like Hoop-de-Doo-ish music in the vehicle on our way. It was like the best. It was such a Disney. Those details are the best. And so I'm a huge fan of these. Our kids are very close to aging out of boosters. So this isn't a big, it's not going to be as big a deal for us, I think, in the future. But I'm a huge fan of these, and I'm thrilled that they're coming back.
Yeah. And it'll be, and there's another alternative, right? It's just another alternative. Like I have not had a problem one time using rideshare anywhere on Disney property, but even if you're staying there, it takes you out of the bubble a little bit. You have somebody roll up in their sweet ride, and as great and as nice as they are, like they're just where you want to go. Like it doesn't have the same quality and level of service. And let's be honest, like when this first came out, I was like, dang, that's expensive. But I mean, if you've got a family of 4, 5, 6, it's really not that bad. And it is a custom tailored experience that still keeps you within the Disney bubble. And I'm a fan of that. Okay, let's transition.
Before we do that, can we talk just really quickly about the monorail and the Skyliner? I know those aren't when you think about boat transportation and bus transportation, those are definitely, I think, the two main modes of transportation. I think the Skyliner is giving the boat system a bit of a run for its money. Yeah. It is limited to, sort of that middle of the property, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, but it does include 2 resorts we have not named because they don't have boat transportation, and that is, Pop Century and Art of Animation. Like I'm firing a little slow this evening, whatever time it is.
Well, who cares?
So that means all of the resorts that are Caribbean Beach Resort we haven't named, the new Riviera Resort, and then all the ones that are on that boat system loop that share the system between Hollywood Studios and Epcot. All of those now have alternative non-bus transportation to 2 resorts, to 2 parks.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal, I think. And when those first launched, everyone's second question was, are they going to expand it? Are they going to expand it out to Animal Kingdom Lodge? Are they going to expand it over to Disney Springs? I have not heard a lick of that. And I think
if they were planning it, I'm sure COVID put a dagger in that.
Yeah. So I think it's still a potential that
could be.
System expands. And then
I mean, the crowds that we're seeing in January, February, March of 2022 warrants that they need it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
The crowds are unbelievable. And then the monorail. I mean, the monorail, I feel like, is such an homage to Walt Disney and the, that original just around those resorts in the Magic Kingdom. And it is absolutely, to me, speaking of resort days or days when you have a non-park day, I think either the Skyliner system or the monorail are both free attractions that you can ride, without having to pay for a park day.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. So if you have a day that you're not going to the park, right? Here's a great way to think through this. Like if you want to go to any of the monorail resorts, you take a bus to Disney Springs, hop on, let's just say, the Contemporary, and then go to the Contemporary, look around there, hop on the resort side of it, go to the Poly, get off there, go all around there, have a meal, leave at Ohana, the OG, and then hop on there and go to and have an adult beverage at the new bar at what is it? It's a Beauty and the Beast theme bar at Grand Floridian, and then go all the way back around. I mean, and then of course, the other thing that we really haven't touched on is that's another transportation that connects two parks. So like the boats over there. Yeah, you can also get to Epcot. Get to Epcot from there, which is great. So you can park at one spot, and then if you want to park hop to Epcot, it makes it nice. You can just leave your vehicle if you drove there, or let's just say you drove your personal vehicle or rented vehicle to Magic Kingdom for the day.
Yep.
Like you can go and park hop to Epcot and then come back and you're right there at the TTC, and it's a much shorter wait. But yeah, great. And so I'm glad you brought those up. And I will say this, Audrey, when we went for the 50th, we stayed at Pop, and that was the first time I'd stayed at Pop since the Skyliner came out. When I am okay eating my words. When the Skyliner came out, I thought I was like, what are they thinking? I was like, first of all, this is going to break down all the time. It can't run during storms. It's not air conditioning. And that's going to feel awesome when it breaks down in August and it's 115 in there. And, which it has happened and which it has been warm and it has broken down for significant periods of time. Yes, people have had to have been rescued. Now I say all that. It's been a while since any of that kind of stuff has happened.
Right.
They went through its growing pains, and I think it's going well now. But if it does stop in the heat of the day, it's going to be warm in there. But they have they have a way to communicate the systems, and I think it's kind of just known, but underneath the seats, there's something you can get into that has bottles of water, and so they thought through something. Yeah. But we used that every opportunity we could when we went there for the 50th, and I wanted to ride it every time we went somewhere. It was it wasn't a long walk. Like it was actually like if you're staying at Pop, it's actually closer to the Pop side of the bridge than it is to Art of Animation. And then you just stand in line for a few minutes, and like we came, and then we went, and then you hop off and get on the one. Where are you going? Epcot or Hollywood Studios. Cool. Right. It was fantastic. So I hope that they extend it and find a way to do it to all the parks.
Yeah. And I remember seeing right before it opened in the morning that the lines at the Art of Animation and Pop Century station, those lines were way back into those resorts. But that system can crank through a line of people in a remarkably short amount of time.
Yes.
I think it's incredibly efficient. I think the way they've designed each of the cars, the ventilation, the first time we rode it was we had a 90-degree day at Epcot. We were exhausted. We left through the International Gateway and oh my gosh, we're going to die on this thing. And it it felt air conditioned. Mm-hmm. And I kept looking around thinking how is this doing it? Again, Imagineers are amazing. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be stuck there. But so long as it's moving, even on the hottest of days, it's fun. And it's just fun. It's beautiful views. You can see so many of the parks. Yeah. Good. Yeah. I'm glad.
I loved it. It was phenomenal.
That's great.
Okay, let's transition quickly to non-Disney transportation. Yeah. And so we've talked about it kind of at length already, so I think we could just graze over a couple of these, and that's rideshare. Yeah. And so pick your poison, whether it be Uber or Lyft. They can go all over property. Like Audrey said, they're limited to where some of those drivers can drop off at certain places. And every resort has a special spot where Uber can rideshare can pick up, drop off. And so, but yeah, they have free reign all over property, at least to get you anywhere you're staying or going to. And so it's a great, obviously, just like anything else, the prices, if you've been in a big city, just like anything else, the prices fluctuate based on demand and the time of day. And so, yes, when the park closes, it costs more. But when you go at like 2:00 in the afternoon, it's pretty affordable. It's like cheap. $10. Yeah.
Yep.
So you've got that. And then we'll cover the rental. Have you ever done a rental car?
No, it's funny that you ask. I mean, we've driven our own car and we have flown and only used Disney transportation. We've never rented a car.
Yeah. As somebody who stays off property a lot, not by desire, but just by, hey, I can go 4 times this year if I stay at a cheaper place. And then, back then it was like I would go for 4 days and the car rental was like $160. When I say back then, that was just like 2019. Man, how things have changed. I looked this past week for like July. It was for 6 days. It was like $750 for like the economy. So bummer. So just keep that in mind. Keep checking if you have points or if you're if you do any of that kind of stuff, pay attention to offers and stuff that come through, whether you have like deals with your credit card or your business. A lot of companies have deals and stuff. But now here's the thing. We always talk about MCO, which is basically Orlando International, but we have flown into Sanford, which is about 45 minutes away. It's not that much difference in time because the I-4 traffic that way seems to be not as bad as it coming from the other side of town. And so obviously you can get rental cars at both, but what's cool is if you fly into Sanford and back to MCO or vice versa, as long as the company is at both, you can pick it up in one, go to the other, which is
drop off there,
the same at lots of major airports, but it's just worth thinking, either airport at Sanford or MCO, you can do that. And then one thing that is kind of new that we actually did for the 50th, and then Brandon and Krista surprised Matthew and I, and they said they were coming, and so they lived there. So, and they were always coming with us, but they decided to stay on property with us. And so they had their vehicle, which we didn't use that much because like I just said, the Skylift worked perfect. But we actually reserved a vehicle through something called Turo.com. So that is Turo.com. And so basically think of it as Airbnb for cars. Yeah, I know that sounds funny, or a rental agency for cars. We had actually rented. We got an electric vehicle. We got like the Chevy Volt because we were thinking, okay, we'll be able to park up front at all of the resorts because we can plug in, and we're like, not the resorts, at all the parks.
Smart. Yeah.
But then we ended up canceling it. So I don't know, like the reservation process and the communication with the host that we actually used to do his car was phenomenal. There's a satellite lot or car. Like if you've been to MCA, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like basically the waiting lot for like where all the rideshare goes. They'll like leave your vehicle there and they give you you just text them when you get there, and all of these, at least with his car, like he had an app and he could unlock it from anywhere. As long as it was crazy. I don't know how it worked anyway, but we wanted to do a Tesla, but that was basically a car payment for a week. So we were like, well, anyway, we didn't, but it's worth checking out because why we did that, it was a few $100s cheaper at the time than renting a regular car. And this was an electric vehicle.
That's awesome.
I mean, not a Tesla, but still.
It was so clever, like thinking about the parking spaces for electric cars at the front of the parking lot. That's so great.
And then the last one to talk about, which I have never used, but if you're traveling to Disney and you have decided not to stay on property and you're not going to have a vehicle, most of the resorts that are off property have resort shuttles. So they're very limited. They may, like in the mornings, it may be like every 30 minutes there's one going to a park.
Yeah.
And when I say a park, it's usually like every hotel is different, but obviously all of them do Magic Kingdom, but they don't do all 4 parks, right? Not everyone, but like I think it was like Magic Kingdom and Hollywood, because Hollywood Studios was probably more requested because of Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge, and there's a lot of new things going on there. But that's where, I mean, you can still get away with not having to do anything extra by checking with the hotel that you're staying with prior to. But again, it will not be a round the clock all day service like your Disney buses are going to be.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
I will say, as far as like tips and tricks, I was thinking of, tools or websites and what do I use when we're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And I want to reiterate one thing that you said when you were talking about when you and Kim were using it, is just the amount of time it takes to get from one place to another. I was searching back through some of my favorited websites. Dave, I'll ask you to put this in the show notes, but there's a WDW Prep School, which is a website we've talked about before. She actually has a tool where you can select your starting point and you can select your ending point, and it will populate a chart that has all of the modes of transportation and the ways to get from point A to point B. And this is within property. It is so great. But it'll also just remind you of how large, at the top of this page, she wrote, that Walt Disney World is the size of San Francisco. So getting from one side to another side it's not an insignificant amount of time. But I love that tool. I used it a lot.
It's brilliant. There's so many great resources out there that a quick search online, you can find in-depth answers. And so this is a low key stab at people that always go to Facebook and ask the question.
I know.
Do the 3.5 minutes, do the 30.5 seconds it takes to think of what to type and type it. And literally the world is at your fingertips.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like, I know that, like, I'll just go to where the Disney experts are on the Disney social media. But mostly you have to funnel through the 867 comments, which 550 of them are, why don't you just Google it? So, yeah. Or use resources like this show.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There's one thing I missed, and it's because this is what happens when you don't write it down, right? You miss it.
No. Well,
I think this is worth talking about. We got to go back to Disney transportation and back to buses specifically. And that is the Disney transportation is still in effect for Good Neighbor hotels. And so if you if you aren't familiar with what a Good Neighbor hotel is, and that they are almost all, if not all of them, around the Disney Springs area. I'm not going to, if you go onto Walt Disney World's website, and you search like places to stay, you'll find somewhere, or search Good Neighbor hotels. These are hotels that, like, they're basically on property. They're still within the Disney bubble. And so they have partnered with Disney, or Disney has partnered with them. And even back in the day, like, they didn't have all of the special things, but there was a time when those Good Neighbor hotels and started to include like the 6 to 8 days out for Fast Pass. I mean, they have added features along the way, but I just wanted to bring up that there's a handful of them, maybe even more than that, in the Disney Springs area that Disney transportation goes to and from parks in Disney Springs. So I forgot to bring that up. So if you are staying on property but at a Good Neighbor, or if you are staying in the Disney Springs area, look around and see if it is a Good Neighbor hotel, because you'll get some, if not all, of the benefits of staying on Disney property.
Yes. That is really important.
Glad I remembered.
Good catch.
Okay, this was great. I felt like we covered that well.
Thank you. Well, good. I'm glad. Hopefully it was helpful for our listeners. And if you have questions, you can Google us, of course.
Okay, so I have to ask a question.
All right.
So you guys are going this way. No, I'm remembering. We go these long gaps without communicating, which is horrible.
I know.
Which is great. It says great things about our friendship, but it's also horrible that we have these big long gaps. You and your husband went on your couples only trip, go to parks. Yes, you did, right?
Yes, we did.
So you have been there for the 50th.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask a quick question that's a huge derailer. And so answer as long or as little as you want. Since you've been there, what is new or different that you're excited for the boys to see that haven't seen?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it has been 2.5 years since we went this summer, but we didn't go to the parks.
Right.
So
except for the water park.
Right. Well, I'm super excited for them to see. We haven't even talked about this, but did we talk about this? That I actually liked Enchantment more than you liked.
No. Okay, we cannot get into this now. You can't be serious. I mean, it's not bad.
I know, but
did you say you liked it more than? Wait, you didn't like
it? No. I liked it. I'm excited for the boys to see it.
Great.
I'm super excited for them to see Harmonious.
My gosh.
And we didn't go to Animal Kingdom, so I know these aren't 50th things, but I really want to see Kite Tails. I'm like so excited about that.
I liked it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's much that they are going to really correlate with the 50th. I mean, I think they'll see the cost, there's like one of the cavalcades that has the Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Daisy in their 50th garb, and they will, get
and Festival of Fantasy is back now. That'll be happening while y'all are there. So it'll feel normal to them.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of will, honestly. They'll be scoping out as many cupcakes with purple iridescent icing as they can eat, and that.
And then, of course, Ratatouille. Like they get to experience something new, a new attraction. But I think the biggest difference for me of what I felt was like, there's all this new merch, and everything had a fresh, shiny coat of paint on it.
Yeah,
like I'm not trying to downplay it as wah, but I mean, like I'm excited. I'm wearing a 50th Mickey shirt right now. If you're watching the YouTubes, like, like that to me was like, look at all this new stuff, right?
Right.
But that's again why I'm waiting till the Moana Journey Through Water and the Guardians and like and Tron. Right. Like I'm ready to go back when then it's like, oh cool, there's a whole bunch of new stuff now and we're still celebrating the 50th. So yeah. Anyway, sorry to derail. I just wanted to I know you guys are close to heading that way. So
we're so close. Okay. We'll talk about that on the next episode.
Love it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.